if I keep riding, I have to stop drinking, and I can give up riding and drink the rest of my life.
So it's great to be here this morning to have a chat with three-time champion jockey Oísin Murphy ahead of next week's Royal Ascot. We're sitting in 1772 at the wonderful Elcot Park, the retreat at Elcot Park in Berkshire. Oísin, this hotel's local to you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very handy to have it only down the road, and it's popular because they have the fitness area here and quite a cool pool, and the food is excellent, so it's a facility I'd use pretty regularly. I think we're very lucky we don't have to venture into London for a little bit of sushi or sashimi.
Yes,
you can just pop in the car and come down the road.
Yeah, very good. Can you share a bit about what inspired you to become a jockey, and who are your sort of role models?
I remember when my uncle Jim Cullity would come to visit, and I would obviously want to spend time with him because I had seen him riding big winners on television, and he would be walking down through Killarney town to go for a bite to eat or whatever. Everyone would stop him and say, well done on best mate or Bindery or whatever horse it was that he'd recently won a big race on, and I was probably between the ages of 4 and 7 or 8, and that was mesmerising. And for the next couple of years, I followed the racing on television. I was obviously very small. I'm not much bigger now, but I was very tiny then. And my father and grandfather were always big Kieran Fallon fans. I wasn't allowed to be a Frankie Dettori fan because he was too flamboyant. And then 2 summers with Aidan O'Brien. He actually filled me with a lot of confidence because I was allowed to ride some gallops, and I felt he went out of his way to give me some advice with regards to my riding, and I don't know, he was just very enthusiastic. I had good family support, and no one told me that I was going to make it, and it was always apparent to me that you needed a lot of luck and then a fair bit of hard graft. Yeah.
And what would you say was your most memorable race that you've won so far?
Well, any time meeting Her Majesty the Queen was obviously very special. God bless her. When I won the race named after her, the Queen Elizabeth II trophy at Ascot on Kipco British Champions Day. So Sheikh Fahad's family sponsored the whole day. And I was riding his horse, Roaring Lion, and he actually watched the race in the presence of Her Majesty the Queen with her brother, with his brother, Sheikh Hamad. And I knew that was very special for them. And then to be able to win on the horse, I mean, I was on the best horse.
But how amazing for it to come off.
Yeah, and they led him in, and he was like the most boisterous, beautiful looking grey stallion. Well, he was a colt at the time. Yeah, it was truly
what an amazing
wonderful.
feeling.
And actually, I ride a son of Roaring Lion actually at this year's Royal Meeting.
Oh wow!
And he'll be favourite in the Hardwick Stakes.
So Oísin, you faced some challenges, including a positive test for cocaine and breaching alcohol rules. Can you talk a bit about what happened and how you've worked through this difficult period?
Yeah, I suppose from the first few years of my apprenticeship, although I was only apprentice for really a year and a half, I was very focused on trying to make it as a jockey, and I very rarely drank. And as I had more success, I started to socialise more. I would eat out every evening, and because I had a driver, I would often drink in the car on the way home from the races. So I got into this habit of drinking every day, and by 2018, I suppose I was definitely drinking too much, but I always had people to babysit me, and I was getting away with it. And then in the last few years, with the pressure of Jockey's Championship or whatever, and it was all self-pressure, I was staying out until like 2 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would never miss a social event. And you know, when I failed that drug test in France, the night before I was at a party and there was cocaine being used by everyone basically, and I'd been around it, but I wasn't silly enough to do coke that night, knowing that I was riding in France the next day in a Group 1, and I got that suspension from France the end of that year, and it was suggested by the likes of Annalisa and David Redvers, who's Sheikh Fahad's racing manager, you know, that I stopped drinking altogether, but I wasn't ready. I remember I was riding for Sheikh Fahad actually in the Phillies Mile. And it was an early start because it starts getting dark that time of year early. So, and there was like an 8 race card or maybe even 9 race. So I showed up to the races at midday and no breathalyzer, and I thought, thank goodness, I'm going to get through this again today. I weighed out, and I was obviously drunk because the BHA organised for someone to come and breathalyze me, and I failed. I was under the drink driving limit, but over the riding limit, which is twice the drink drive. Sorry, which is half the drink drive. And that was the 3rd time in 3 years that I had been over. And, you know, really I could have been sacked by all the people that had been using me. And I thought to myself, well, if I get through today sober, that'll be the first day. So the first day probably since June, you know. And I don't know how I spent that evening, but I got up the next day and I knew I had one chance of riding a winner, and it's quite a famous race, the Cesarewitch. I actually sat last on Buzz, and he came through the field when they were all getting tired, and he won. And probably that success gave me that bit of a boost that you know, I am a kind of a good rider, and I can still achieve, and you know, I want to sort myself out now. This is maybe my final chance, because I can, if I keep riding, I have to stop drinking, and I can give up riding and drink the rest of my life, or until I run out of money, which at the rate I was socialising, you know, was going to be in the next few years anyway. You know, it's kind of up to the person, but once you've said you've had enough, then you really can change your life around. But I can't reiterate the fact that it's no good people telling you. It has to come. It has to come from within, because people can convince you to like do something for a period of time, but it never lasts.
Well, good on you. And following on from that, how important has support from family, friends and the racing community been?
You know, I got a 14-month suspension and a 30 grand fine. 9 months.
30 grand?
Yeah, 9 months of which were for the COVID breach, and the full fine was for the COVID breach. So actually for my reckless drinking, I only got 5 months, which is quite extraordinary. But during that time, Annalisa would check in all the time, and Andrew would say, oh, come and ride out. I have this horse called Chaldine that you must ride. And bear in mind, Chaldine was an incredible racehorse, but he wasn't a flashy workhorse. So there was many a morning I went in there excited, thinking he was going to like burn up the gallops, and he just went in front of his lead horse. But they made me feel welcome, and it was extraordinary because it was the first time in my adult life that I'd been able to eat as well.
What was that
so
like?
I found myself in a good mood all the time. You know, my earning capacity was slightly limited, but I didn't have much to spend money on, other than
eating.
And my mortgage, you know. So it was an interesting.
Did you good?
Yeah, and I went to loads of like dinners and lunches, and you know, drove myself home because I didn't need a driver. and remembered what was discussed, and I took a little bit more control of my finances as well. I never knew how to log into my online banking, and I met with my accountants for the first time, and I did lots of kind of what I thought were normal things, but were very strange to me.
Looking ahead to Royal Ascot, that's now literally just over a week away, can you tell me a bit about the rides you hope to have?
Yeah, so this is the most stressful time of year. I'm in a very good mood this morning.
Good.
But from when the entries start appearing from next Wednesday, I will begin to start thinking about whether the horses are good enough, how I'm going to ride them, have they had the right preparation, even things that are out of my control. That's probably the worst thing. But I'll be busy. I'll have probably 6 or 7 rides every day. It's a meeting where I really, really want to achieve, but it can be a very lonely week. Last year, for example, I had 6 seconds before I had a winner.
Oh, how frustrating.
Yeah, and then I won the Commonwealth Cup, which is a Group 1 for 3-year-olds, on a horse called Shaquille, and I only secured the ride the morning of declaration, so 48 hours before. I was very fortunate to get on him, otherwise it would have been a winless Royal Ascot for me. And this year I have reasonable chances. Probably last year I had better chances than the handicaps, because I felt like some of the horses were rated really well, and they were better than their ratings because they hadn't had a chance to prove themselves yet. I don't probably feel like that's the case this year, but in the championship type races, I think I have good chances, so I'd be over the moon. But the Ascot Gold Cup probably has more significance than any other race, and it's the one I always think you remember who won it year on year,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when your racing career finishes, which hopefully won't be for a very long time, do you think you might like to become a show jumper or even a venter, perhaps?
I have horses with Oliver Townend, and
do you?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
And I have a very good speed horse that actually won a 5-star class in Cannes on Thursday. After my career, I'd like to continue maybe to buy and sell, but maybe a bit more. I do rely on the 2 lads though, because they ride at such a high level, and maybe compete a bit as an amateur, As I'd like to be a good amateur if I could.
And finally, Oísin, Elcot are actually apparently having a Royal Ascot preview evening here on Wednesday, 12th of June. Have you got any top tips you could share with us for next week?
I can certainly go through a few. I think notable speech in the St James's Palace Stakes is going to be very hard to beat. Obviously, Richard Hannon has Rosalien, who's not trained far from here as opposition, but I think notable speech will benefit having not gone to Ireland like Rosalien has. So notable speech won the Kipco 2000 guineas at Newmarket. Rosalien was second. Then Rosalien went to Ireland and won the Irish 2000 guineas. I think that's a very good race, and I think it's a 2-horse race really. I think Middle-earth can go very well in the Hardwick. He's obviously my mount. If we look at the 2-year-old races, I think Aidan O'Brien will have a very strong hand. I think I ride one for Joseph O'Brien in the Coventry. And the fact he's already booked me before the entries come out, I hope that's a good sign. Maybe, that could be an each way sort of play for someone. I ride Evade for Archie Watson in the Jersey. And although he only just won at Epsom, he did a lot wrong. And I think he's an interesting horse because he'll be a big price because he's quite difficult to ride. He's very hot. And I can definitely see him running in the first 3 or 4. And normally in the Jersey with a big field, you'll get paid first 4 or 5 each way money. So yeah, without giving too many, I think they're probably the most likely horses.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Sure.
Thank you so much, Oísin.
Oh, my pleasure.
That is really, really kind and very interesting to chat to you. Thank you, and good luck next week.
Thank you very much.
Have everything crossed for you.
Cheers.